All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Uger, True North, with you guys today. John is back. He's got his 28th nickname. He's also Johnny Tie today.
That's true.
Okay, the Viking beard is gone. You still have a beard of sorts, but not anywhere near what you
used to. This is just the scruff I always had.
Yeah, that's just scruff. That's
first
not True
thing
North.
when I got home. Shaving off that beard.
That beard, man, that was some True North stuff, man. It really was.
It was bigger before I went back because I took this little break in the middle of the 2 months. It didn't get back because I trimmed it a little bit. It didn't get back up to what it was when I first got back. But if you follow me on Instagram, I took a picture when I had trimmed it down on only half my face, and it looks ridiculous. So go subscribe to that and upload it soon.
You know what? I follow you on Instagram. I'm looking forward to that picture.
Oh, it's going up soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So John went to the North Pole. We thought we were done with him.
Technically, but
yeah, well,
close.
whatever, close enough. Okay. He went True North and almost got to the pole. The name of the show that he's going to be starring in is True North. That's why I keep saying that. It's going to be on Verizon Go 90. It isn't anywhere near done yet, so
couple
okay.
months.
Yeah,
couple months.
It's like he's done shooting it, but they have to edit it, etc. So it's good to have you back. You were gone a while.
Good to be back. Missed it.
You know, we partly sent you up there so that in case the planet melted down, that you would be the lone survivor.
And me and Shavala.
That's right. And now you have come back, and the planet is in mid melting down.
Yeah, you guys didn't. I thought she would get a hold of the natural disasters while I was gone.
No.
She didn't really make any headway.
No, we've gone in the wrong direction, which leads us to our first story.
Okay, well, why don't we talk about that then? The wildfires that have been devastating Northern California have continued on until when we're filming this video. It's still going, and we're going to reveal some of the numbers associated with these fires, numbers of people killed and missing, acres destroyed and all of that, and they're difficult to grasp because we don't expect, in Northern California, you expect they're going to get a hold of it, but it's been getting worse day by day, and it's especially difficult because it is still ongoing, and those numbers are almost certainly going to go up because things like searching for people, that isn't even really happening yet because they're still trying to contain the fire itself. So we're going to show you video and we're going to show you pictures, but first, just a quick update. So far, as of filming time, nearly 170,000 acres have burned. More than 500 people are missing in one county alone, and I've read that more than 100 are missing in other counties. 21 people have already died in the fires. More than 50,000 acres are burning in just those two counties. Actually, I have family living in Sonoma County. And at least 1,500 homes have been destroyed, although that number is, like the others, premature because these are areas that have been destroyed. Some of them it's difficult to know exactly how many because the damage has been so thorough. And you'll see in the video, maybe we can start to roll it as we talk, that it's not, you don't have the burned frames of buildings. You don't have some damage to buildings. You have complete destruction of buildings with little or nothing left in most cases.
Oh my God, it looks like a nuke hit it. Even with a nuke, some things would still be left standing. So some updates right before we came on air. It's now, it was 1,500 homes. It's now over 2,000 buildings that have been absolutely burned to the ground. It is now 560 people missing. And if you're wondering how in the world are people dying, I mean, shouldn't we know a fire is coming well before it does? Well, in this case, no, because there's huge winds and they are spreading the embers throughout the area and it's jumping to places they didn't expect. And so some of the stories of how folks died in the fire is absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So here, I'll tell you two of them right now. One was a 28-year-old guy in a wheelchair, and he couldn't get out. And so it jumped to his building. Another case, they were fine, but to give you a sense of the speed, so they were in their home, they were fine. Next thing you know, there's the fires jumped to their backyard, and they're like, Jesus, what the hell's going on? They get their 11-month-old kid out, they get the wife, the husband, and the brother out, and then they said within 5 minutes it was gone. It was, and the whole
house
thing
was gone.
Yeah, destroyed. Okay, like it had jumped in the house and then thank God
really
they got
fast.
out.
Here you're seeing the beginning of a few before and after shots of particular buildings or areas, how they looked immediately before and immediately after the fire.
Yeah, and then what absolute heartbreaking story of a couple that had known each other for 90 years, literally. One was 100, the other one was 98. The gentleman was a World War II hero, and he had lived through that. and they'd met each other when they were in grade school, got married, had lived together for all that time. He died trying to get her out of the fire, and they both died in the fire. So this is among the worst fire disasters in California history. In one area alone, the Tubbs wildfire in Sonoma County, in this particular incident, 11 were killed. That's the 6th deadliest fire in recorded California history. And our technology is a lot better than it used to be in terms of forecasting, in terms of being able to put out fires, and still it's one of the deadliest fires in history.
Yeah, you're seeing there about the outline of Hilton.
Wow, look at that, man. That is unbelievable.
And we talked just a couple of months ago. We covered some of the large, long-term wildfires that have been going on in, I believe it was up in the Northwest and getting towards there from the Midwest. And obviously these are devastating fires that destroy huge areas of land, often forests, and last a very long time. And those are still ongoing. Those are big problems in a lot of the parts of the country. Thankfully, some of those areas are relatively less populated, and so the death tolls tend to be lower, the number of buildings tend to be lower. I don't think that we have as much experience with densely populated areas experiencing fires of this sort, and I read a lot about why it was so devastating in this area. So partially it is the wind, but I mean, you don't think of Sonoma as being a place where, oh yeah, you know, for its wind, that's a problem, but when an area that's relatively natural still, an area with grass or a little bit of bushes, a fire sweeps through, very often it'll consume the flammable material very quickly. Like with grass, it can literally take just a few seconds, and then the fire is effectively dead because there's no fuel anymore. But with man-made constructions like homes and other buildings, the fire doesn't burn through very quickly. It can stay for a long time, and combined with the winds, that provides embers to fly off of the burning material for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, meaning that it tends to spread in more directions around the initial area of the fire. And so, like we said, still ongoing. Maybe we can show a few more of these graphics. You bring up 25, I believe. You're gonna see, I think, a satellite photo of one of the areas taken by NASA.
Yeah.
It's immediately after, you're seeing the amount of smoke there.
So let me give a further context here. They woke up, so we talked about 170,000 acres burned in California. They woke up this morning and it was 70,000 more. So it was 100 and then it was 170,000 in the morning because it's literally spreading like wildfire. And so, and it just, the scope of the problem continues to shock people. It's now only 50 miles outside of San Francisco. So we're used to wildfires in areas that are sparsely populated, as John was mentioning. One of these days, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is it's going to hit San Francisco or Los Angeles or another major city.
LA had that fire in the valley just a month ago.
Yeah, and by the way, it's in Orange County now.
Yeah.
But you know, it hasn't hit a massively populated area yet, but it will.
Yeah, imagine the evacuation troubles that we're gonna have in that case.
Yeah, in one of the counties, they evacuated 25,000 people, mandatory evacuation. They evacuated everybody, and they said, leave everything behind. We got to go right now, right? Now, evacuating 25,000 people is hard. Evacuating several million people is way, way harder. In LA, the county and the nearby areas has 14 million people in it. So, I mean, these disasters are of epic proportions. Quick clarification, I said it was a guy, it was actually a woman, Christina Hansen, who was 28 years old and in the wheelchair that died in the fire, and the 100-year-old veteran of World War II was Charles Rippey and his wife Sarah, who was 98. And then further scope for all of the West, 8 million acres have been burned this year alone. So in Montana, the fire raged for months and months and months. So we've talked about the wind, we've talked about the housing. Of course, the last part that is incredibly important is how dry it is.
Yeah.
And the droughts and the dry land is absolutely related to climate change. The warmer weather picks up the moisture from the ground and makes it much drier, which makes the fires more severe, longer lasting, and what you're seeing in front of you, the extreme devastation, is also because of climate change.
Yeah, we could go through the whole thing. We've had to do it so many times, and unfortunately it looks like it's gonna be even more next year and more the next time. Trying to get especially Republican politicians, to understand that climate change is not the caricature that they want to make it out to be. That climate change can simultaneously cause in different parts of the world dry conditions and more rain, mudslides, hotter conditions and colder conditions. It can cause all of those things. The climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. That was one of the things actually on the documentary that it's great I do all the research and all that. But I was on a ship with the scientists trying to map why it is the ice is melting so much earlier and so much more than it used to. And they actually had some great data. This is not a thing where it's like, oh, the last 10 years have been bad, maybe the next 10 will be bad. We have no idea what the next 10 are gonna be like because it's not expanding in a way that we can easily map out. And so we're seeing the wildfires now. God only knows what story we'll be covering in 5 years in the Young Turks.
So John was just near the North Pole. It's documentary he's referring to as True North, which is gonna be on Verizon Go 90 in a couple months. And look, the right wing mocked the scientists with their data and science when they said, look, the major cities will be flooded. That's not gonna happen. And then during just Superstorm Sandy, New York's ground zero area was flooded. Then Houston, massive unprecedented flooding in Houston. And then when the scientists said you will have both droughts and flooding, you'll have great fires and storms. How could that possibly happen at the same time? Alarmist, ridiculous. We're living in it right now. It's exactly what they predicted. And it is fire and fury. And we have messed with Mother Nature and it's only gonna get worse. Once the ice caps melt and the methane is released, methane is worse than carbon. If you thought this is bad, buckle up and brace for impact.
Well, after that, so you're talking about fire and fury. Why don't we transition to a different type of fire and fury, this time in a non-natural form. So we know that apparently Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, called Donald Trump a moron. Well, now we know why, and it looks like Rex Tillerson was right to label him such. NBC is now reporting that Donald Trump not only wants to modernize our nuclear arsenal at the expense of $1 trillion or more, he also wants to massively and probably impossibly expand the number of nuclear weapons we have in our stockpile. This is coming from a meeting that he had with some nuclear experts. Donald Trump was apparently not happy with the steady decrease in the US stockpile of nuclear weapons that has been going on since the 1960s, and asked instead for a 10-fold increase in the US's nuclear weapons. That is apparently what led to Secretary of State labeling him a moron, which is probably underselling it. Now, we want to give you some historical data because that's referencing a specific sort of decline. So let's show you this chart here where you're going to see the number of nuclear weapons, at least officially recognized, in our stockpile and the events that have led to them going up or down. And you see there that back during the scariest portions of the Cold War, when we got the closest to actual all-out nuclear war, we did indeed have between 25 or 30,000 nuclear weapons. But thankfully, as a result of international diplomacy, the work of NGOs, and a number of other factors, that has steadily been decreased to the only still insane and scary number of about 4,000 nuclear weapons in the US arsenal. I don't know how you look at that and think that 4,000 nuclear weapons is not enough, but that's what he thinks.
Yeah. Well,
now, he said he wants a 10-fold increase. But as stupid as that is, how he did it was actually stupider. The president referenced the highest number on the chart and told his team he wanted the US to have that many now. Now, you might think, well, our country is big, our military industrial complex is huge, and there's a lot of money, so I guess it's stupid, but sure, we could have them now. Except that this dummy doesn't know that we have one functioning facility that can produce nuclear weapons. And if you were to try to get to the number that he wants of 32,000 additional nuclear weapons, it would take that facility 350 years to produce all of the nuclear weapons. Now sure, if you were to throw $5 or $10 trillion, maybe you could build some more facilities, but that's bigger than the Apollo programs, that's bigger than the Manhattan Project to build the sort of advanced nuclear weapons that we would need now. And he thinks that that's fine to just casually reference during a meeting. Don't do any research, don't learn anything, just say that we should build 32,000 additional nuclear weapons.
So he's so childlike and ridiculous that in meetings like this, usually the staff just ignore him, and the generals ignore him. They go, well, obviously we're not going to do that. There's one expert that was quoted as saying, literally no one in the government or the military believes that is possible or desirable. Literally no one. Okay, so they go, okay, the child is acting up again. Let's just walk out. And Tillerson walks out and calls him. He's like, the guy's a moron. What can we do? Let's just ignore it. Okay, so now to give you a sense of scope of how stupid he is. Number one, even though we have a smaller number of weapons and the chart seems to go down, they are actually far more sophisticated than the weapons we had in the 1960s.
Yes.
So those 4,000 can destroy the world several times over. And it is a stronger arsenal, and thank God, a safer arsenal than the one we had in the 1960s. So just because the number of missiles is down doesn't mean our capabilities are down. Number two, it's actually one of the things that Republicans brag about the most, that Ronald Reagan did all these arms deals, that he was strong, but he was able to do arms deals that brought us peace. Peace through strength was literally his slogan, and that's why Ronald Reagan is so great. And so he goes, all right, now let's destroy that and bring the arsenal back up for reasons that no one knows. We know what it is. I'll get to that in a second. So then, of course, the other consequence of that, well, then Russia and China are going to re-engage in the nuclear arms race. And
they wouldn't know.
And so you've now made the world far, far more dangerous. And then, of course, there's the tremendous expense. I mean, unbelievable expense of trying to create 32,000 of the new kind of nuclear weapons that we have, which are more expensive, et cetera. Look, we're updating our nuclear program right now, and that's about $1 trillion project. And that doesn't involve building 32,000 new nukes. So the scope of it is so out of bounds of reason and proportion.
It's already wasteful in a way that it's difficult to express. $1 trillion. I mean, sure, you could modernize these weapons that we all say we will never ever need to use or would ever use, or theoretically, I mean, that would pay for, how many times over would that pay for public college for every single American?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not a close issue. But if you're a Republican and you, just think about it this way, right? If there's still like the three of you left that are like, no, I'm convinced Trump's a genius, we just don't understand him, okay? So wouldn't a smart person, instead of saying, well, that's it, I see the chart, I want to have as many nukes as Eisenhower had or Nixon had, I want the nukes. Instead of doing that, wouldn't a logical smart person say, hey, just let's do a little bit of research on this, guys. I think it's giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think we might be safer if we had more nuclear weapons. I know it might seem counterintuitive, but here's my logic behind it. But guys, can you tell me how much it would cost? How many facilities do we have to make them? How long would it take to make them? Could it happen under my watch, or is it a 20-year project?
What effect would that have on other countries?
Right, what is our treaties with other countries? Would it affect those treaties? These are one of many obvious questions that you would ask. Come on, guys, even you would think to ask anybody. You're a plumber, it doesn't matter what you are. You're out of work, you're in a holler somewhere, okay? You know that you would ask, how much does it cost? You don't just give an order, oh, I don't like it that I'm at the bottom of this chart. No, I want to be at the top of the chart. What kind of a maniacal fool would say something like that? And he just says it like, no, go do it. What does that mean, go do it? Do what? Like, did you get it authorized? Do you have the spending? Is it in the budget? How would it affect the budget?
It's not like getting a Diet Coke. It's not like run and get me a soda. You can't just say go spend trillions.
So the reason he wants to do it is because he wants to win. He wants to have more nukes than the other guys, which we already do. But he also wants to have more nukes than past US presidents because he wants to win. But in reality, it would bankrupt the country and make us far less safe.
I think the solution is actually pretty simple. Based on, right after he became president, he said, I have ordered a modernization of nuclear weapons, which was already gonna be done under President Obama. It's way too expensive, but Obama was already gonna do it. And he said, and thanks to that, we are now much stronger and safer. Even though it hasn't happened yet, it's going to take years. He thinks he ordered it, it already happened. So he should just order the building of 10 times more nukes. They should just say they did it and we'll call it a day. He'll think that it happened, he'll never check. But this is very scary. I mean, other reports have said that he has looked for, quote, more usable nuclear weapons to be produced because he wants us to be able to use them without it being a big old deal. We know that he'd apparently talked to a foreign policy expert, and that foreign policy expert was shocked that he asked multiple times why it is that America can't use nuclear weapons in conflicts. Back during the campaign, if you Google the worst answer in debate history, I broke down his answer to the question by that conservative radio host.
Hugh Hewitt.
Yes, exactly, about the nuclear triad. He doesn't understand anything about anything, but particularly when it comes to nuclear weapons. And this is a guy who back in the 80s was saying that he should be put in charge of negotiations over arms control with nuclear weapons. He said he would need between 1 and 2 hours to learn everything you need to know about missiles.
Yeah.
In fact, I probably already know almost all of it.
Oh God, he's so
He said that decades ago.
Come on, everybody in the country knows.
I probably already know everything there is to know about missiles.
Okay, so monumentally stupid. All right, I'm gonna have fun here and end by reading you some of Trump's quotes. When he was asked by Chris Matthews on whether he would use nukes, he started to answer by saying, "I'd be the last one to use nuclear weapons." Well, that sounds pretty good.
That's good, yeah.
He ended when Matthews asked him, "Well, what about ISIS? And can we say to the Middle East, you definitely will not use nukes?" He said, "Well, let me explain. Somebody hits us with an ISIS, you wouldn't fight back with a nuke?" Well, then no, you would be the first to use a nuke. Yeah, no.
Best case scenario, the second to use a nuke. But he still seems pretty eager.
But wait a minute, ISIS does hit us from time to time. No, that doesn't mean we launch a nuke in the middle of Iraq, which is an ally. I mean, that is such a maniacally stupid thing to say. Okay, but I'm not done yet. So when asked about the nuclear triad, the question that John was referencing, I'm going to read you what he said. Now, the nuclear triad, and if you don't know, that's okay. You're not necessarily.
You don't need to.
Yeah, you're not a military expert or political expert, etc. It's are the 3 different ways that we can strike with nukes: submarines, bombers, and then intercontinental ballistic missiles. Okay.
That was already better than his whole answer. Right there.
Okay, so he could have given an answer about, hey, I think we need more subs, but less bombers, whatever, right? So he obviously, of course, has no idea what the nuclear triad is, but Hugh Hewitt asked him, and here's his answer. We have to be extremely vigilant and extremely careful when it comes to nuclear. Nuclear changes the whole ball game. The biggest problem we have is nuclear. Nuclear proliferation, having some maniac, having some madman go out and get a nuclear weapon. That's, in my opinion, that is the single biggest problem that our country faces right now.
That happened last November, actually.
That's right, when a madman got in hold of some nukes and wanted to build some more. So the biggest problem we have is nuclear. What kind of a sentence is that? What does that mean? And if the biggest problem we have is nuclear, why do you want to build 32,000 new nuclear, as you would call them? So then Hugh Hewitt goes back and tries one more time. He's like, very good, I understand the dangers of nuclear weapons that you try to explain there, but what in specific about the nuclear triad, what do you think we should do in that policy? He had just a one-line answer. I think for me, nuclear is just the power. The devastation is very important to me. We've elected someone that honestly is, I mean, it's so far below average intelligence that there's some chance that he needs institutional help, and he's in charge of nuclear weapons at the White House. We got to get him out. The guy's an absolute. I mean, now I'm like borderline feel bad because he's clinical, man. He's clinical. He needs somebody to hold his hand. He's he's got issues.
Yeah.
He is clinically stupid.
But with thinking that, what's scary is it's on display. Everyone can see it, and it shows how fragile our actual democracy is. That we can have a guy who's obviously unfit to be there in charge, but because he's there, people that know better, people that know what danger there is involved, can't or won't say anything because they're like, well, he's the president. I have to let him destroy the country. Why? So this whole how we boast for hundreds of years about how great of a nation we are and how our forefathers created this perfect nation, which they didn't, it became better, was because we actually followed the way we were supposed to do it. Now we're ready to abandon all of that for one person because he was elected by a bunch of crazy people. So after that happens, we're willing to throw it all away. It's fine just because he's there.
Well, that's why I changed my mind on the 25th Amendment. I think he has. I mean, I don't know if it's mental damage, brain damage, or he just was born special. And I feel terrible saying that, but his IQ is so low that it's literally a danger to the country and to the planet.
Based on the 80s comment, this is not new.
Yeah.
He was as stupid in the 80s as he is today.
Yeah, and one more thing about what JR said. Look, guys, one, it's absolute shame on the Republicans and everybody who voted for Donald Trump. That the quotes I read you from before the election, that you'd listen to a guy in a debate say, the problem is nuclear. You know, nuclear is dangerous. I know that.
The devastation is important to me.
Right. And you voted for him. Well, you raised your hand and said, I don't mind really stupid people. I relate to them. So that's on all of us as a country and certainly the people who voted for him, okay? Yeah. But the second problem is that his opposition. Jesus Christ. How do you not break his back on that? Hillary was, she ran all those attack ads, but it was all about like he's a mean guy, a bad guy. But some voters don't mind mean. What they mind, if you actually showed it to them in a way that they could understand it, is stupid. So she should have mocked him mercilessly and say, hey, Donald, what the hell does nuclear mean? What does that mean? We have to be extremely careful when it comes to nuclear. Nuclear changes the whole ball game, okay? Donald, explain what that means. And then pause, hey, no. That was in a Republican debate. Chris Christie, all these guys who are tough guys. Why didn't one of you stop and go, no, Donald, answer the fucking question. What is the nuclear triad? What is the nuclear triad? Yeah. You don't know what the nuclear triad is, do you?
I'll give you a
name
hint. I'll give you a hint. There's 3 parts of it.
Yeah, and by the way, you probably
do.
Right. Name one. You don't know it. You don't know. Just say, I'm running for president and I didn't do any homework. I'm running for president and I don't know one of the most important issues there is, which is our nuclear power.
An issue that he had specifically requested decades earlier that he be put in sole charge of.
Because in 2 hours he could figure out the whole nuclear. Okay.
Wow.
Fucking moron.
We've got some fallout that's coming from NBC's reporting of that meeting when we come back from this break.
Go.
Hey, Grace wanted me to give you this.
She sent it from Alaska?
No, she just gave it to me.
What? Have you seen Grace? 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 Grace. Grace.
right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and True with you. Ironix Ping writes in on YouTube Super Chat, climate change does affect wind speed. Interview Paul Beckwith. Okay, well, thank you for the suggestion. We will look into it. Sarabies writes in with... Sarabies! That's all he said. He said, Sarabies! Oh, yeah, no, it didn't play in the studio. Sarabies! There you go. Woke Poppy writes in on Twitter, the fire in Orange County was visible from Disneyland. Smoke covered Orange County for days. Laura Gelazunas writes in, humans keep destroying the planet. There is no planet B. The Earth will continue to spin with or without humans. And finally, Matthew Reed says Trump is actually going to bankrupt America because he's trying to compensate for something. That is unfortunately also true. Okay, now, if you are anywhere near Vegas on Wednesday, I need you to go to Bally's and meet John Iderol. What
I'm gonna be gambling.
World? That's right. Okay, bring money.
I have a problem.
No, the Unity Reform Commission is meeting on Wednesday at Bally's in Las Vegas at 1 p.m. And John's gonna go over there, do some interviews, but they're discussing some really, really important issues, including superdelegates, whether we should have them or not, primaries versus caucuses, Democratic Party reform. And we want to shine a spotlight on it because almost no one else is covering it. And this is when they make the decisions on how they are going to run those incredibly important primaries for 2020. So if we want to make sure that they're done right and the right rules are in place, this is the time to act, not 2 years from now.
Yeah.
So join John there. But if you're wondering, okay, how am I going to get info on that? Go to tytnetwork.com/get-updates, because then we will text you guys or email you, etc., and let you know where and when exactly you could meet John. But again, anywhere near Vegas on Wednesday, go to Bally's and make your voice heard. This is the time that the Unity Reform Commission needs to hear from you. They often hear from the lobbyists, but they should hear from you guys.
And there are people who are going to be there arguing. I don't know what the argument for superdelegates at this point is, but they will be arguing for these sorts of things, and many of them are counting on that no one will be there aside from the people debating. There's not going to be, nobody's going to be paying attention, nobody's going to show up. But imagine if they have to walk through a crowd of people with signs and chants, making it clear what they expect to come out of these meetings. That will have an effect.
No, that's absolutely right. And the reason is just, it's not for us to have an unfair advantage. It's exact opposite.
No, I'm fine with that.
No, it's because we have the people, they have the folks in power. So a lot of these folks, and a lot of them are well-meaning. There's 9 Hillary Clinton people, but 7 Bernie Sanders representatives on the Unity Commission. That's why it's the Unity Commission. But they live in a lot of them live in the DC bubble or in the Democratic Party bubble. And so all they ever hear is from consultants and lobbyists and other folks in the establishment who think superdelegates are awesome, and and different ways of spreading out power. For example, open primaries so more people can vote and more people can join the Democratic Party. They think that's a bad idea. They've somehow convinced themselves of that. So if you think otherwise and you want to strengthen the Democratic Party by involving people more, this is a great opportunity to do it. So go see John in Vegas on Wednesday. All right, okay. John, what's next?
So after it was revealed that Donald Trump wants to build about 32,000 additional nuclear weapons at the cost of countless trillions of dollars, he didn't like that reporting had come out. He didn't like the reaction that it had. And so he responded by threatening to shut down media outlets that were critical of him. He tweeted this: with all the fake news coming out, fake, didn't he come up with that word, fake? With all the fake news coming out of NBC and the networks, capital, at what point is it appropriate to challenge their license, capital? Bad for country. That's our president right there, kids. So challenge their license, as in his belief is that he can, as president, take away the ability of places like NBC to broadcast, because of course the government has a role in the licensing of the public airwaves to allow information to get out there, for shows to get out there. What he doesn't seem to understand is that the FCC is not involved with networks in that way. It would have no ability to stop NBC as a whole from broadcasting. It has to do with very particular local things. He doesn't get that. He tweeted another thing. Fake NBC News made up a story that I wanted a, quotes, tenfold increase. You just put tenfold increase in our US nuclear arsenal. Pure fiction, made up to demean NBC equals CNN, which is something many of our viewers would probably agree with that last part. MSNBC anyway. Yeah, so pure fiction. Now, when a report like the NBC News report comes out, you can't be sure that it's true just because NBC News, it's that they check things, you can't be sure. But when he responds in this way, you know it's true. That's the pattern with Donald Trump. Now we're gonna have some video in just a second. But I know that there's a big debate between people who think that this is just bluster to take us off the real issue versus those who are worried that this is a guy who will do what he can to shut down media outlets like a tin pot dictator that are critical of him and that we should take it seriously.
Yeah, so there's a legitimate issue here, and then of course there's Donald Trump. So the legitimate issue is, these folks were given the public airwaves and they weren't charged anything. In return, they were supposed to provide public information and news. And then at some point, they were like, just kidding. We're going to turn news into a profit center. So they twisted news into something that it was never meant to be. So I don't want to get into a long history of that. But the bottom line is, if he were to say, look, I'm going to treat all of the TV stations fairly, equally, but now they have to pay for the public airwaves. Well, that would be a really interesting conversation, right? Or provide some sort of public service, because are they really providing a public service now?
The vast majority of the ones he has a problem with are not they're cable, like they already are doing that in many cases.
Yeah. So
you're right, it's a big conversation.
So that's an interesting intellectual conversation that people have from time to time. That is not the conversation Donald Trump is having. Okay. So a guy who says bad for country is not having an intellectual conversation, and random letters equals random letters. But NBC equals CNN. What is that? Anyway, so no, he's saying, I want to punish people who are speaking against me. Well, that would be the single most unconstitutional thing you could do, because the government cannot impede your freedom of speech or the freedom of the press. That is clearly lined out. It can't be any clearer than it is in the First Amendment. So when he says, me no like what you say, NBC bad, like CNN bad, I don't want to punish the other guys. Fox News is awesome. They don't have to pay for the public airwaves or anything like that.
I read today he calls Sean Hannity after most of Sean Hannity's shows.
Okay, but me no like you. Okay, me shut your speech down.
Yeah.
Well, then okay, then you don't believe in America, because I mean, come on. All the right wingers who cry about Milo or Shapiro and all these guys and their freedom of speech.
Where are they?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any more freedom of speech than the government.
Where are the classic liberals?
Where are the classic liberals? The government saying that if you say something wrong about the government, we will shut you down.
Yeah.
So the guy doesn't understand America. He doesn't understand democracy either. He just wants to be king.
Yeah,
He's like, why won't they just do what I tell them to do?
Yeah.
Why do I have to work with a Congress or a court system or the press? No, I won. And he thinks I'm the president means I'm the king, I'm the dictator. You now have to do whatever I tell you. That's not how our system of government works.
Yeah, and we have an international audience, and so I'm sure that there are people watching the show right now that live in countries that at one point had a free press and then found that it was taken away from them by people like Donald Trump in their own country. So feel free to comment about your experience. Hopefully we will never experience it, but we can still learn from your experience. And finally, if you're one of the people that is attempting to maintain your mental health by only occasionally checking in on Donald Trump, let alone with his tweets, you might think, okay, this is just another one of his random blusters. So like it's a threat. He comes up with stuff like this all the time. But this is not a random new thing from Donald Trump. These threats to tighten up our libel laws and to look into media outlets, that is a pattern that he has gone to a number of times since the campaign, during the campaign, and in his private life long before the campaign. This is a man who has been attempting to sue out of existence anyone who criticized him for literally decades. So please do not make the perhaps fatal mistake of assuming that this is just a threat that he would never follow through on. He has already in his private life done what he can to shut down criticism of him, and there is no reason to believe that he would not do it as president. Now, some more corruption for you. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Health and Human Services Secretary, Tom Price, was forced to step down from his position because of a scandal involving his use of private planes paid for by taxpayers. Well, it looks like he might maybe not be alone for that much longer, because there's another secretary who's involved in a similar sort of activity. And let's see if we can get some discussion going around that. This is Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, who has attended at least 2 additional political fundraisers while traveling for official business, meaning business you paid for, including a weekend ski getaway. That sounds nice. I've never been on one. He's held at least a half dozen other events with big donors or influential conservative organizations while on official trips. And again, official trips, that just means trips you paid for him to go on, and yet he's going off and having fun with these donors and raising money for political purposes. And it's weird because it almost seems like they should outlaw that or have rules to regulate it, and they do. The Hatch Act and other federal laws allow cabinet secretaries to participate in partisan political activities only if they do so on their own time and do not use any governmental resources, which is a difficult case to make when you have literally flown through the clouds on a ticket paid for by me and Cenk and JR over there. Now, they've looked into it. The FEC records show that the campaign committees don't list any reimbursement payments to Interior for the events. And so while they are attempting to cloud the waters by saying that they've listened to the Office of Ethics inside of the White House and they've comported themselves based on those rules, it is clear at this point that they have not. And a number of these fundraisers he's gone to are the sort of events where people are paying $2,000 to $5,000 for photos or to shake his hand, raising massive quantities of money while being there ostensibly for official business that we hope he still is paying attention to, that he's still doing his job, but he sure seems busy with ski resorts.
So first of all, John, I have been on ski getaways.
Oh yeah?
Yes, I'll tell you about it in the post game because there are fun stories from the old days of chicken nuggets and not paying for the expensive burgers in the ski lodge.
So you're a regular Zinke.
That's right. So we'll do that in the post game for the members. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member and get all the post games. Okay, now on to Zinke. In one of the trips, he's like, "No, that's true. I went to a fundraiser, but I also had official business." What'd you do? I toured Yellowstone. Okay. Now, look, to be fair, he is the Interior Secretary.
Yeah.
Okay. But
He's probably busy finding areas of it that he can sell off to private corporations.
That's right. He's like, do we have oil here? Do we have oil? Okay.
I think I see some copper.
So he could go to Yellowstone. I mean, if I'm the Interior Secretary, I probably want to see Yellowstone at some point. But let's put a couple other meetings around us so we don't waste taxpayer money, so that when we go there, it's kind of worthwhile. No, he wanted to go to the fundraiser, and he wanted to find an excuse to go to the fundraiser. He's like, "Oh, I got it. Yellowstone is nearby. Let's go walk through the park."
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So
I mean, look, this isn't corruption of the sort that like you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to a football game purely to leave, to gin up racial strife in the country. It's not that bad. It's not Pence bad, but it's bad.
Yeah. And they just don't respect the rule of law. That's the great irony. That's Trump's main speech during this convention was, we're gonna bring back law and order. But the reality is the Hatch Act is super clear. Anybody who goes in the White House knows it. It's one of the first things that you get orientation on. Hey, here are the rules, here's what you can and can't do. They know they're not supposed to use taxpayer money to go do fundraisers where they basically get legalized bribes. But they don't care. They think, no, Trump has done everything and broken every rule and still gotten elected, so kiss my ass. I'm gonna use your money. I don't care. I'm gonna take your tax dollars, even though I've been saying my whole life that, oh my God, taxpayer dollars is sacrosanct, and I'm gonna use it to raise more money for my big donor friends. And raising money from donors now has become so complex. For us, it's still a little revolting. You hear about it and you're like, oh, these guys go and couples paid $5,000 to have their picture taken with Zinke. Oh, I can't imagine anything more that's more wasteful than that.
I told JR they could have saved money. Just go to a deli, find a guy, take a picture with him, say it was Zinke. No one will know. Who's gonna call you on that?
Right, but of course, so I guess they want the picture, but really what they want, of course, is favors.
Yeah.
And so we've all gotten used to it, but everybody in Washington, which is the swamp, thinks, what do you mean? I have to go suck up to donors and take pictures with them and then hear the favors they would like. What do you mean? Yeah, that's called bribery, and we should never get used to it. We just made it legal. We have to make it illegal again and regain our democracy. Wolf-pack.com. The next time Ryan Zinke goes to Yellowstone or anywhere else, you know what I'd love for him to run into? A wolf pack. Okay, just the political kind.
Wait.
Just
Okay.
the political kind.
Okay.
Not the real
dire
kind. Wolf-pack.com. Get money out of politics.
Yeah. We're gonna take our second break of the hour. When we come back, a congressional pharmacist reveals a prescription he has to write for congressmen that is terrifying.
Antifa!
right, back on the Young Turks. 2 tweets for you guys. Lentil Soup writes in, too many dictators have grabbed power because the opposition kept underestimating what they would do. Agreed there. I was talking about this on yesterday's program. Yesterday, I had this feeling of doom that I had right before the election, that we're underestimating how stupid he is. I know I keep saying it, I'm sorry guys, but how much damage he's going to do. Everything will be fine. No, things will not be fine.
Yeah, we haven't had the taxes yet.
And that a guy that maniacal, staying in power for that long, he's gonna break something and it's gonna be really bad. All right, anyway, J. Thomas Gordy says, Trump calling out fake news is the presidential equivalent of that kid that screams, "Nuh-uh," when another kid calls him out. It's 100% true. J. Thomas Gordy, nice. You made us LOL. Get a t-shirt, brother. ShopTYT.com. Now we got the nasty t-shirts for nasty woman. You know how the mayor, of course you didn't. You were in the North Pole. You know Puerto Rico was flooded. Did you know this?
What the hell? Yes, I do that.
And the mayor of San Juan was wearing the nasty t-shirt.
I did see that. Yeah.
So ShopTYT.com. All right, what's next, John?
Okay. The son of Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore has apparently been arrested for the 9th time. Now, this is his son who isn't running, so you might think, well, why do we really care? But we're gonna give you a couple of reasons to care. Here is a photo of the 9-time arrestee, Caleb Moore there, who seems to kind of like it.
Yeah, he looks like such a spoiled prick.
He doesn't seem to mind.
Yeah.
I think, look, it's hard to tell from just one photo, but I diagnosed him with a little bit of affluenza. Yeah. But anyway, he was charged with a 3rd-degree criminal trespassing, a misdemeanor related to another misdemeanor charge from November 2016 for hunting without a permit. So yeah, that'll get you in trouble there. Now they are related, of course, so maybe you can lump those together. Now, Judge Moore's campaign chairman, Bill Armistead, said that this is a, quote, cheap political trick to detract from the real issues facing our country. And I agree, it is a cheap trick. I don't know why Caleb Moore is pulling these tricks and getting arrested all the time. Stop it, you're distracting your father. But anyway, now Caleb Moore back in 2015 said something very similar during one of the other many times that he's been arrested, saying this is nothing more than a prime example of how media and crooked police officers and critics of my dad try to not only destroy his career for what he stands for, but will go as far as trying to destroy his family. Again, yes, it is terrible, so stop doing it. By the way, he's also been charged with DUIs in Alabama and Florida and had 3 other drug-related charges in 3 separate Alabama counties. He has been busy.
Yeah, in 2015, he also had a charge of when he was caught with marijuana and Xanax. Look, it's not a crazy thought that there are politically related arrests in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
Karl Rove famously orchestrated the arrest of Don Siegelman, who was the governor and who was a Democrat and ruined his career and actually sent him to prison. It was one of the most outrageous political tricks of all time. So Republicans in that state might be thinking, what do you mean? We do this all the time. You know, we bury people totally unfairly. Now, in this case, really? They're going to go after a guy whose son, they had no idea that Roy Moore would run for Senate. He just ran for Senate this year. But just in case, they arrested his son 8 other times in the past.
Just in case.
And they were like, hey, they called up the state of Florida. Hey, that guy's probably driving drunk again. Can you go get him for political reasons?
Yeah.
Or perhaps the 8 other arrests were just because he's a knucklehead.
Yeah.
And probably the 9th one as well. And I don't think you have to look that far to find Caleb Moore breaking the law.
No,
so
it doesn't seem that difficult.
Yeah.
Now look, as we said, he's effectively he's related to someone who's running for office, a very high profile and a nasty guy with a terrible history and reputation. But he's still basically a private citizen, so you would be fine to think that maybe this doesn't really matter. But it does kind of matter because his father's been a judge for a long time. This is clearly someone who believes that his family connections allow him to do whatever he wants. And I would say more importantly, although perhaps a less high profile issue, is many of these things that he's been arrested for, other than like the DUIs, marijuana charges and things like that, how about we not have them be illegal? How about we not have ultra conservative people like Caleb Moore's dad making it so that people can get routinely arrested a number of times for consuming something that is far less bad for you than the alcohol that everyone around us is drinking constantly?
Yeah, I would legalize marijuana so he wouldn't have gotten arrested for all those things.
Exactly.
You know, and like some of it is like hunting without a permit. If you didn't get the right permit because you had driven drunk there. Okay, I understand, right? If you're shooting a gun in your backyard, I don't understand, that's dangerous. So it depends on the circumstance, right? So look, I don't care about the kid. He seems like he's incredibly spoiled, but on the other hand, he's Roy Moore's son. That couldn't have been a good way to grow up, right? I mean, his dad's a massive prick.
So he's not really the important part of this. It's everything around it.
Yeah, but it does get under folks' nerves a little bit because you know that if you were arrested 8 times, you wouldn't have been able to be arrested 9 times because you'd be in prison serving a pretty long sentence after 3 DUIs, etc. Unless your daddy was a judge who ran on law and order, except when it applies to his own son.
Exactly.
So now that he's been arrested the 9th time, here comes daddy to the rescue again, pretending that it's a political vendetta to get his son out for the 9th time. He just means law and order for poor people, not for himself or his family.
Exactly. Okay, one more story, are we done?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, one more. For a number of decades now, members of Congress have had access to a little-known clinic and pharmacy very close to the House of Representatives that's run through a membership program. Through this clinic, they can gain easy access to drugs very close to their place of work without, for the most part, having to deal with regular people or have it be clear that they're going for those drugs and things like that. Now, this by itself is not necessarily all that important or all that interesting. But recently, the pharmacist at that little pharmacy has come out and talked a little bit about some of the prescriptions that he's been giving, without being too specific. And so we want to give you information about the clinic and also the consequences legislatively coming out of the clinic. Now, it's the deliveries of these drugs that come for the basically private use of the representatives, go to the office of the attending physician, and Navy doctors perform like basic triage of medical emergencies. Like you want to have it very close in case there's a problem. They had a period decades and decades ago where several representatives died in a short period of time. So it makes sense at that point that they had it. It makes a little bit less sense now when there's a CVS on every corner.
That was in 1928.
Exactly. Now, at its busiest, it sends as many as 100 prescriptions to members in a day, which is not exclusively to representatives, but it's mostly to them, and that's a lot. Now, there are many prescriptions that a person can get. The average American diet is horrendous, and so it's our natural destiny that we will end up on various forms of drugs at some point in our life. But there are ones that make you stop and make you think just a little bit. So this is Mike Kim, the pharmacist, talking about his experience and says, at first it's cool, and then you realize I'm filling some drugs that are for some pretty serious health problems as well. And these are the people that are running the country. He listed treatments for conditions like diabetes, which is fine, and Alzheimer's, which seems a little bit more consequential. And he goes on to say, it makes you kind of sit back and say, wow, they're making the highest laws of the land, and they might not even remember what happened yesterday.
Mike Kim is definitely gonna get in trouble.
Yes, Mike Kim is screwed. Now, like he didn't reveal exactly who it went to. Maybe he hasn't broken the law. I would take a vacation if I were you.
Yeah, I'm not concerned that he broke the law, but look, and he didn't say Republican or Democrat. In fact, the one example he gave was of, and not related to any Alzheimer's or diabetes or anything. He just gave the example of John Kerry, who's a Democrat. He said he came in the day after he lost the election, and he's like, isn't that amazing? That guy could have been the president of the United States. He was surrounded by Secret Service. The next day he's a schlep waiting for waiting in line for his drugs at the pharmacy, which I actually love that about America. I wish we had that happen more. But so it's not political in that sense, but nor do I think it's a violation of law. I just feel bad for him because I feel like lawmakers are gonna be like, you let people know that half of us are getting prescription for Alzheimer's and we don't know what the hell we're doing. That could be trouble for him.
Yeah, and I noticed, so this was, I think I originally saw it on a Raw story, I believe, and the comments were almost universally apparently conservatives saying, the Dems on drugs, it's probably Schumer, it's probably Pelosi. Like that's what you're scared of? The people who have absolutely no power or ability to enact laws, that's what you're worried about, that they have Alzheimer's? How about the people who are actually passing the bills? How about I'm not even gonna name names, but let's think back to some political events of this year. Were there any, perhaps Republicans, who had weird difficulties expressing themselves and remembering things? No. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. And now you hear Alzheimer's, and my grandfather actually is pretty deep in Alzheimer's at this point. It's a very debilitating and a very sad condition that affects a lot of Americans. But we don't know that they're at the deep end of Alzheimer's. Maybe they're just at the very beginning. And so I looked up the early stages of Alzheimer's, and here are some of the effects that it has. Problems coming up with the right word or name, fine. You have a little bit of trouble speaking, that's not a big deal. Trouble remembering names, challenges performing tasks in social or work settings, forgetting material that one has read, losing or misplacing objects, increasing trouble with planning or organizing. Those are things that it does not take a big leap of logic to figure out how that could affect a person that's working in a legislative setting or working in committee meetings or any of that. Now, as really fast, as JR pointed out at today's production meeting, the only thing saving us here is that none of these representatives or senators actually make up their own mind. They just vote the way their donors tell them to. So perhaps the Alzheimer's doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But it is still worrisome.
Yeah, well, that's partly where I was going with this. First of all, to be fair, the pharmacy also services staffers, lobbyists, and family members. So not everybody getting the Alzheimer's medication is in Congress, but very likely some are, and staffers are younger. And so this does go to two actual problems. One is that the people in Congress are uniformly incredibly old on average. I mean, Dianne Feinstein just said she's running for re-election. She's 84 by the end.
84?
Yes, by the end of her term, she would be 90 or 91. Okay, so and the reason is once you have money and power and you've got a good donor base and good name recognition, you just hang on for dear life, and they stay there and they're ancient. And in my opinion, the corruption sets in and it calcifies. So that's the bigger problem. They guys, don't worry about that. They don't remember the bill. They never read the bill in the first place. So remember that talking point that Republicans had about the Democrats? Oh, you didn't read the Obamacare, did you? Later, they went on to say they bragged how they didn't read their own legislation. And that was only 13 pages.
Yeah,
they never read it.
There's a lot of things they have to do that are not reading or voting on bills though.
No, there's only one thing they read: the email from the donor, which tells them which way to vote. Okay, so the Alzheimer's, unfortunately, is the least of our problems in this corrupt system. Okay, I actually do want to do the Megyn Kelly story. We're going to do it real quick.
Okay.
Go for it.
Man, I thought that polar bears would get me. I didn't think that I would die from a shiv from Anna Kasparian for running too far into her hour.
That's coming.
But it's going to happen. Okay, let's see. Megyn Kelly's new show is apparently having problems, but the problems aren't just for Megyn Kelly. The show is performing so poorly that it's actually dragging down other shows on the network. Apparently Megyn Kelly Today, which I don't think existed when I left, is attracting 32% fewer viewers than the same time slot on that channel a year ago, which that's trouble. Now, according to an unnamed source inside of the show, not only are ratings plummeting since Megyn Kelly joined the Today franchise, but the numbers show Kelly's lead-in has also affected Kathleen Lee Gifford and Hoda's show as well, which follows straight afterwards. Normally, you want a good show so that then you do well. They've taken huge hits, 26% ratings plunge. And they have tons of data from previous years to compare this to. So it's not difficult to figure out what the important variable is there. The unnamed source went on to say too many people are tuning out NBC. Hoda and Kathy Lee had been a bright spot in the mornings. People are alarmed.
So, a lot of television is about demographics, who's watching which channels at what time. So there's all these different, so women are more likely to watch midday and historically and today. There's now a bigger African-American audience per capita watching than white folks, and at least for television. Certainly online is completely different, right? And it is a much older demographic on TV than it is online. And you might think, hey, older might help Megyn Kelly. She's from Fox News, and the average age of the Fox News viewer is 108. I'm kidding, but it's not that far off. It's 68 years old.
It was years ago. God only knows what it is now.
Right, and so But for whatever reason, she's not connecting with that audience. Plus, look, everybody's ratings are going down. It's television. People are cutting the cord.
Yeah.
But and give it a chance. Like, people panic too early. And look, I'll use my own experience. When I first went to MSNBC, my ratings dipped a little bit because there was 3 giant news events that helped CNN. It was Bin Laden's capture, Fukushima, and the Egyptian revolution. Those are all moments when people turned to CNN's cameras. Oh, what's happening in the streets in Egypt, in the nuclear meltdown, et cetera. But we just kept doing the show the right way that we knew we were good at and we're gonna deliver on. And then my ratings went way up after those were over, and after I was criticizing Democrats even more, along with, of course, my furious criticism of Republicans, and we wound up pulling out of it and actually having the highest ratings they ever had at 6 o'clock, which helped, by the way, Hardball, because I was Hardball's lead-in. He was my lead-in at 5 o'clock, and then they repeated at 7. So people tend to panic early. Just calm down, let it find its audience and its voice. And I think that it was a mismatch from the beginning, and I think that they're looking at it from a old school TV way of like, oh, she's a pleasant, attractive anchor with a nice smile. What we need in the mornings is a nice smile. This is like 1955 way of thinking. I don't think that that's applicable today at all. And they thought, well, we'll just take her and put it in. But the part that I think drives a lot of people crazy, and apparently also including inside NBC, is her salary.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, so Matt Lauer is the highest paid employee at NBC. He gets $25 million a year, okay? Megyn Kelly is now number 2. All the people who worked at NBC for all their lives, I mean, forget the camera guys, et cetera, which you shouldn't, okay? But all their anchors, et cetera. Sorry, Megyn's now number 2 at $23 million a year. Okay, so now some people got on our case because they say, oh my God, you raised $20 million in financing to help your company grow. One anchor who got famous on Fox News for saying Santa's definitely white, okay, makes $23 million a year.
Yeah.
And she just puts it into her pocket. She doesn't build a company. She doesn't get you a nice app.
Yeah, you wanna have fun, figure out what that breaks down to per episode of her show.
Okay, but look, likely it's guaranteed. I think she has a 3-year deal, so she's gonna make $69 million.
That's crazy.
No matter what. But there should be some degree of accountability. So it's one thing if your ratings go down 32%. It's another thing if you're making $23 million a year.
Yeah, and look, the reason that I wanted to talk about this, like we don't normally comment on people's ratings, like we don't normally care about that, but I think that it's, especially with her transition from Fox News over, and then the fact that she had her interview show, and then apparently while I was gone, she suddenly has this new show. It's the phenomenon on TV where once you're in, like you're just in forever. Every one of your predictions can be wrong. You can say stupid, asinine things constantly. It doesn't matter. They will shuttle you between shows and formats and time slots until you eventually retire. And you don't, at a certain point, even need to perform. And it's because they don't understand what makes people watch something or not watch something. They just think she's a name, we can stick her in any kind of show and the audience will go. And she didn't need to prove herself on that network. It was instantly $23 million. That's crazy, and people hear that and they think, Megyn Kelly making the $23 million a year, how the hell does she know anything about what my life is like? I mean, she's not commenting on news as much anymore, but it's just such a disconnect between the executives and regular people and what they think regular people want, between regular people and the anchors who live the lives of sultans and kings of the days of old.
Yeah, and look, it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, if somebody gave you $23 million, you'd probably take it. Right?
I would. Yes. Offer it to me, please.
But there becomes a disconnect when everyone you know in your circle is a millionaire, really, really wealthy. It's a little harder, apparently, to care about the minimum wage being $7.25. I mean, that gets you about $15,000 a year. For her, that's like, I don't know, about a minute of her show.
It's probably 5 to 6 minutes of one of her shows.
So is it any wonder that the guys on TV can't relate to you guys, and they don't even know it? To them, they're like, what do you mean? No, I know some people in the middle class making $300,000 to $500,000 a year, right? Like, no, that's not the middle class.
No.
That's actually really rich, just not anywhere near your level of rich. So, yeah, again, I think that they should give her a chance, keep going, let it try to find, and let her be authentic. You guys are watering her down. She's gonna be a raging conservative. Let her be a raging conservative. You're gonna be far better off. And since they have such an expensive contract, they'll let her run for quite a while. And so I'm not hating on her, and God bless her. We'd all like to make that kind of money. But there is a disconnect between the folks on TV and the rest of us for good reason.
I would say just give her a chance until she claims that Santa Claus is white or has a history of saying racially inflammatory things or attacking people based on their race. If she developed that sort of history, look it up, then you could say maybe she doesn't deserve an additional chance.
Yeah. All right. Now we got to go. All right. We have a lot more stories for you guys, including you're going to be shocked to find out that a white supremacist who beat down an African American guy and sent him to the hospital was lying about the black guy that he beat down. But the thing is that's so maddening is the cops immediately trusted him and arrested the black guy he had assaulted.
Based on shaved hair alone.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna tell you that. Anna's gonna tell you that story when we come back.
Masha!
All right, back on the Young Turks. So 2 tweets here. Admiral Marston writes in, we must remember President Reagan had early Alzheimer's while in office. He did fine, right? One could argue, right? And I think that was your point. Matthew Reed says, reporting on Megyn Kelly's failing show is punching down. So
is it?
Well, so here's the thing though. That's what's so maddening about the current state of the media, especially if you're in our shoes. So her show probably gets about a couple million people. It's broadcast network, it follows Today's Show. I didn't look at it lately, but it's probably in that ballpark. We probably, the Young Turks alone, not the rest of the network, probably gets about 4 million, 4 million at least a day, okay? So our show is larger than her show. So in a sense, Matthew is right that we're punching down, except for the fact that she makes $23 million a year.
Yeah.
So there is something wrong in that equation. It's insane.
That's so much money.
In another post game, I'll probably talk to you guys about like what's wrong with the media dynamic, why the online shows that are more successful don't get anywhere near the TV shows that are failing the money. I mean, it's not even in the same ballpark. So it's so out of whack. If you're gonna do any advertising, you are nuts to spend $1 in TV. I mean, that is so wasteful. I mean, as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump found out, she spent a couple of $1 billion on television. He spent like 10% of it on online, and he kicked her ass because online spending is 1,000 times more efficient. Meaning good for you, bad for us, because our rates are way too low. Anyway, member shout outs are Dan Swando and Sheann Walker. In today's post game, I'm gonna tell you guys super cutesy ski getaway stories from when I was young and we would go skiing and our antics, as it were, okay?
One small fun fact. This is just according to a tweet. Over 440,000 a week made if you're looking at 23 million a year.
Making 440,000
over, just 442,000, something like that.
We're talking about the
a week.
We're talking about the remainder of the contract. We're talking about the remainder of the contract. It's reference to an older story.
All right. Anyway, become a member. TYTnetwork.com/join. All right. What's next?
All right. Today, Donald Trump gave a speech about his tax plan. Of course, we all know that he is not really planning on pushing for tax reform, but rather tax cuts. And of course, those tax cuts will benefit the wealthy, including wealthy corporations. Now, the big argument is, well, if you give these corporations these tax cuts, maybe they'll trickle on you, okay? Maybe they'll trickle some of that wealth on you. Maybe they'll create some jobs. Well, thanks to you guys. Thanks for your support in hiring journalists to investigate issues just like that. We have been able to not only hire a great team, but a team that is uncovering stories regarding these corporations and what they really plan to do with these tax cuts. And Jonathan Larson, who is the managing editor of these reporters, is hitting the nail on the head. Recent example is UPS and FedEx, the 2 companies that TYT is investigating. They just published a piece today about how while they are pushing for these tax cuts, they are also simultaneously lobbying for technology that would allow them to use drones and fire people, okay, lay people off, and also do more automation within their companies. So tax cuts will not create more jobs for companies like this. In fact, they will take these tax cuts and do something completely different with it, like investing in technology advancements that would allow them to lay more people off and save more money. So
yesterday I did a story on the automation part. They've got the update today on the drones. You should definitely read that. Go to tytnetwork.com/investigates to get more of those stories.
Yeah, it's an excellent piece. You do not want to miss it. So please take a moment of your time to read what they're up to. It's very illuminating.
All right, what's next?
All right, moving on. After the hate rally that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, a video went viral showing the beating of a counter-protester named DeAndre Harris. Now that video was extremely graphic. It showed just how viciously he was being beaten by white supremacists and how police just stood by and kind of let it happen. Now, the update to that story is the fact that DeAndre Harris has been served with an arrest warrant. And that arrest warrant indicates that he could potentially face criminal charges for hurting the white supremacists, which sounds crazy, right? Now I'm gonna fill in the details as to why there's a warrant out for his arrest. But before I do so, I just wanna remind you of how viciously he was beaten by these white supremacists. The video that we're about to show you is graphic, so I wanna give you proper warning. But with that said, let's take a look. All right, so now according to his attorney, he suffered serious injuries as a result, including a concussion, a head laceration that required staples, a fractured wrist, a knee injury, and other abrasions, and contusions across his body as a result of this clash, okay?
He got 10 staples to his head.
Yeah, so we can all see what happened in that video. Now, fast forward to recently, and all of a sudden there is a man by the name of Harold Ray Cruz who says that he was wounded because of DeAndre Harris's actions. He claims that he was hit with a flashlight and that he suffered physical injuries as a result of that. Now, the video shows that the flashlight barely even touched him. And hold on, before we go to this video, so the footage shows that DeAndre Harris using a flashlight wasn't even an issue. Like it barely even touched anyone,
okay,
right?
but look, more important than that is the white nationalist Harold Ray Cruz spears Harris. Harris, to defend himself, swings the flashlight and grazes him or misses him or whatever.
Right.
And then you see the video where Harris gets pounded by 6 guys at once and needs the 10 staples in his head. So now you know what right wingers normally say. Hey, look, if I ever get attacked, I got to stand my ground. So Harris was attacked first. There's no question about it. If he was a white right winger, he could take out a gun and shoot all 6 of them and go, I was attacked and I stood my ground.
Yes.
And I was afraid of my life. And by the way, there might have even been some justification because as it turned out, he should have been afraid for his life. They could have killed him there.
They could have very easily killed him, okay.
So, but then Cruz says, oh my God, I've been so aggrieved. In the middle of me nearly lynching this guy, he dared to fight back for a second ineffectually, so I would like to have him arrested. And the cops are like, well, of course, yes, sir. Of course, sir.
It wasn't even the cops. He went specifically to a magistrate, and I'll give you the details of laws in Virginia and why this warrant was able to. He was able to get this warrant out for Harris's arrest. Now, before we get to that, though, remember Cruz claimed that he was injured as a result of Harris, using his flashlight against him. But Harris's lawyer actually managed to find footage of Cruz getting hit by a different individual on the head, okay? And this incident happened while Harris was already in the hospital. This was following the assault that Harris had to deal with. Now, we're gonna show you the video that was released by Harris's lawyer. We made sure to use a red circle to make sure you focus on the specific part of the video because there's a lot of commotion, there's a lot of chaos going on. But just pay close attention to a completely different individual hitting Cruz over the head with what appears to be a metal pipe. All right, there it is.
Okay, so the guy who did it is not only not Harris, he's white. Okay?
Exactly.
Now, he shouldn't have done it, and he should be arrested. So now Cruz had already attacked Harris and should have been arrested on the spot. By the way, they were right next to the police station. But to be fair to the cops, as I said during the incident, it was madness in the streets, okay? So Cruz does not get arrested. He's walking around and a white counter protester hits him with a pipe. Now, that guy should be arrested because I don't even know that he knew anything about Harris. That incident was already over. Harris is already in the hospital, right? But Cruz, once he gets arrested, goes, oh yeah, it was that no good black guy who hit me. Now, he could have said, it's that white guy who had nothing to do with the incident and you should arrest him because he actually hit me. He did, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no. And he's a leftist or whatever, right? But no, he's not gonna blame the guy who actually did it. He's gonna turn around and blame the black guy who didn't do it.
I mean, it's absurd. So how is it that there's now a warrant out for Harris's arrest, right? Especially with no evidence that he did anything wrong. Well, Vox dug into this, and it's fascinating how easy it is to get a warrant out for someone's arrest. Let's go to graphic 4. According to Vox, after filing a police report, a victim can approach a magistrate, which is what Cruz did in this case, for an arrest warrant against someone accused of a crime. The magistrate then needs only probable cause based on the victim's testimony, which is a fairly easy requirement to file an arrest warrant. This is what Cruz reportedly did. So keep in mind that there are still white supremacists who beat Harris out on the loose. They haven't been charged. Only 2 individuals have been charged in that case, okay? And the only reason why they were charged was because people like Sean King were doing their own investigation and pushing to identify those people so they could actually, be brought to justice. They had to fight for that. But in this case, we're talking about the victim here. Think about how easy it was to get a warrant out for his arrest.
So let's just break it down a little bit further. So there's 6 guys who attack Harris. Only 2 of them are caught so far. And by the way, when Harris swung the flashlight in defense, it was not at Cruz, it was at another one of the white supremacists. So the Cruz thing had absolutely nothing to do with Harris. So there's a couple of problems with the system here. One is that if you're the cops, okay, as I said earlier, it was mayhem. Maybe it was hard to figure out that there was a terrible assault happening right next to your headquarters. But afterwards, that's gotta be a little embarrassing. So you wanna probably spend a lot of time trying to find the guys who did that vicious beating right next to your headquarters. I don't know how much time they've spent on it. I do know Sean King, by the way, TYT contributor, is one of the guys who spent a lot more time and actually found the guys some of the guys in the video. So then secondly, as Vox explains, it's too easy to get an arrest warrant through a magistrate in that system. So that's not just about DeAndre Harris, it's about the system. But once you find out, I mean, earlier would have been the time, but certainly now, that no, wait, that's not the person who hit Cruz. So we're trying to arrest the guy who's got the 10 staples in his head, who is a victim of a vicious racial beating. That's the time when you take that warrant away. So can we get to that already? That's the injustice we're talking about.
Exactly.
There was only a way that in this country people could use their platform to bring forward issues like this, the systemic injustice in our judicial system amongst certain groups of people, because the people in power that can hand out these warrants for arrest of a victim of a vicious beating, that it maybe can be highlighted and brought forward without the president of the United States saying that's BS and let's shut that down and allowing a big organization to back him up on it. I wish we could find some way to address this issue because it sounds like it's real.
Yeah, well, let me go further, Jared. So obviously, President Trump attacked the black NFL players and now some white NFL players who are kneeling to protest police brutality. Now, and systemic racism, by the way, not just police brutality. And so here we have the system with yet another injustice against an African American. The police didn't do the beating, okay? Be very clear about that, but here's a clear injustice. So not only is the president attacking the people fighting the injustice, trying to fix it, but wouldn't it be amazing if we had a president who actually fought to fix the injustice? It seems like, no, that's way too much to ask for, right? But shouldn't the president be more upset that an American citizen was beat down viciously based on his race by 6 guys who are not only clear white nationalists, the guy that we're talking about, Cruz, does a a podcast called Southern Nationalist Radio.
He doesn't hide the fact that he's a Southern nationalist. His Twitter account, which by the way, he's got protected tweets, which I find hilarious, says Southern nationalist.
Yeah, so known white supremacist. Shouldn't the president be more angry about that beating and the injustice that flowed from it than people who are protesting that injustice? He doesn't care, man. It's not that
he doesn't care, Jake.
He's the
one
opposite.
who, yeah, he fanned the flames. He is the reason why those who planned this hate rally felt emboldened enough to go out there with their cheesy tiki torches and say what they said, do what they did. He's the one who emboldened them, okay? And anyone who denies that is either oblivious or just purposely doesn't want to admit it.
So every player in the NFL should take a knee, including all the white players. And now when the owners are trying to intimidate you and say they're gonna sit you down and make sure they shut you up and make sure you just play for them and entertain the masses for them, but won't treat you with the dignity when you fight back against injustice like this, all of them should kneel down. And Jerry Jones, you're not gonna sit Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and Des Bryant. You're not gonna do it. So take a knee, force these greedy, pathetic NFL owners to actually, okay, then do it. Go ahead, fire us all. Let's see how the Cowboys turn out if you either bench us or fire us for actually caring to do something about injustices just like this. We dare you.
All right, moving on to a completely different topic. After dozens of women made allegations against Harvey Weinstein and his alleged sexual harassment, sexual assault, and in some cases rape, a number of Hollywood celebrities came out and condemned him aggressively. One of those celebrities, though, was not Lindsay Lohan. In fact, she felt the need to come out and defend him in a very strange video that she posted on social media. Now, without further delay, let's take a look at what she has to say.
Hi, this is Lindsay Lohan. Hi, I'm in Dubai. I'm home. And I feel very bad for Harvey Weinstein right now. I don't think it's right what's going on. I think Georgina needs to take a stand and be there for her husband. And he's never harmed me or done anything wrong to me. We've done several movies together. And so I think everyone needs to stop. I think it's wrong. So stand up.
Wow. Okay.
I mean,
okay.
She was never victimized, so
yeah.
All of these accusations must be untrue.
So you guys
so
are gonna
embarrassing.
get some of you are gonna get mad at me, but she sounds like a right winger. It didn't happen to me, so what do I care? It's if it didn't happen to me, it's not real. I don't get arrested for being black, so I assume nobody gets arrested for being black. Okay, I don't get pulled over for being black because I'm not black. So it must not happen to black people either. So Lindsay Lohan's like, he didn't sexually assault me as other women have said he did, many different women. So it must not have happened. She put a little halo above the emoji of Harvey Weinstein.
Yep.
I'm not sure there's a guy in the country that deserves that halo less. Yeah. Right, Roger Ailes is dead. So, I mean, you've got other serial sexual assaulters like the president. So,
and O'Reilly.
Right, but so she's a weirdo, and I don't know whether I want to get angry at her or feel sorry for her. So she has a ton of money, and she goes around all these different capitals with really rich friends. So what do you like? Not much to feel sorry for, right? But she lives in this twisted world where everybody's a yes man, and they're like, oh, Lindsay, you're the greatest, and everyone you know who's friends with you is the greatest. Isn't Harvey the greatest? Oh yeah, everybody's the greatest. Ugh. I mean,
she lives in Dubai though. Like okay, so in that video, she mentioned Georgina Chapman, who is now leaving Harvey Weinstein. They've been married, right? And they have 2 kids together. And she's like, you need to support your husband. What? And I mean, that just, it sounds like what religious extremists would say, right? You support your husband with any and all costs. Like no matter what, you support your husband, you gotta stand by your husband. No, if your husband has been accused by dozens of women, by the way, A-list actresses like Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow, like what do they have to gain out of lying about, sexual harassment from Harvey Weinstein? They have nothing to gain from that at all. So it's absurd, and saying to a woman, you need to support your husband after all these accusations have come out against him, how about you mind your own business, okay? Georgina Chapman gets to make the decision that she wants to make, and you you are completely irrelevant to that discussion.
Yeah, to say that his wife is the problem, it's insanity. But that goes to the problem with fame, and that's why I both am sickened by her and feel sad for her, is that this is what fame does to you. After a while, if you're as famous as Lindsay Lohan, you can't relate to any other human beings. You stop feeling empathy unless they somehow help you. Harvey's put her in roles, that is a good thing. He's in the business of helping Lindsay Lohan, so that's a good, she reminds me of Trump a little bit, so self-centered.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is me. There's dozens of women who say that he, assaulted them, harassed them, masturbated next to them when they didn't ask for it, and and groped them and all this stuff. Yeah, but they're not named Lindsay Lohan, so why would I care? So that's a person who helped me get rich and famous, so I'm gonna stand up for him. The fame is it's a dangerous thing, man. And so at least at that level, and I think she's literally sick in that regard.
Yeah,
and I feel bad for her. I mean,
I don't feel bad for her.
No, but she's almost clinical, like Trump. They're so self-obsessed. How do you relate to any other human being when all you can think about is yourself?
Yeah, it's really disastrous, but.
The only empathy she's shown is to Harvey Weinstein.
I know, and it's
insane.
Wow, okay. Anyway, let's move on. Conservatives have aggressively gone after liberals following allegations that Harvey Weinstein had sexually harassed or sexually assaulted dozens of women. Now, Margaret Hoover, who is a conservative, felt the need to call other conservatives out on their hypocrisy. And I just want to give her some credit because I think this was bold. I think that this was very much true. And I think it takes guts to speak out against conservatives and how incredibly contradictory they are on this issue. Take a look.
It's shocking to me how differently the left and the right have handled major sex scandals. When Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes were revealed to be predatory, I can point to two people in the conservative universe who said this is bad behavior and it is not conservative. One was Peggy Noonan, one was David French at National Review. Nothing else from anyone else. On the left, you have movie star after politician, after US senator, disassociating himself, disavowing, condemning bad behavior, and a really stark contrast culturally between how the political left and the political right handle this situation.
Wow. That was admirable. I'm glad that she said that because you don't hear that criticism much on cable news. Cuomo said a few things about that as well, but I'm happy that there's another conservative pointing this out because this shouldn't be a political issue. Regardless of someone's political affiliation or political identity, it has to do with people in positions of power who use that position of power to prey on those who have no power. And I don't care if it's a liberal, I don't care if it's a progressive, I don't care if it's a conservative. If someone is preying on others the way that Weinstein has, the way that Roger Ailes did, the way that Bill O'Reilly did, then they should be condemned. And I don't care about their political affiliation whatsoever.
So Margaret Hoover used to be at Fox News, and there they, for a long time, circled the wagons. And eventually the executives, partly because they wanted a multi-billion-dollar deal done in the UK, changed direction. But a lot of the people on air for a long time, nope, stuck with Ailes, stuck with O'Reilly, no matter what. And now they're gleeful. They're like, yes, we found one liberal who's as much of a prick as Trump, Ailes, O'Reilly, Bowling, whatever, you name it, right? So they're like, oh yeah, what, condemn. We want you to condemn. No, Hillary condemned, but she didn't do it quickly enough. No, she should have done it nanoseconds afterwards. She shouldn't even finish reading the story. She should have condemned right away. Obama, he didn't condemn quickly enough. Okay, now that's a thing that didn't condemn quickly enough. Chris Hayes pointed out on Twitter today that one of Obama's daughters interned at the Weinstein Company. So obviously they didn't know, otherwise they wouldn't have sent their daughter to intern there. So they never knew, and then once they found out, they condemned him. You guys, most of the right wing, as Margaret Hoover just pointed out, never condemned Roger Ailes or Bill O'Reilly. Sean Hannity just had Bill O'Reilly on his show, then turns around and goes, why won't they condemn Weinstein?
Yeah, that's right.
Why won't they condemn him quickly enough, forcefully enough? Why haven't they punched him in the nuts yet? Okay, so no, we know what it is. And what drives it is projection. And they assume that we will protect Weinstein, we as in progressives, right? Because they protect, right or wrong, their guys. Sean Hannity thinks, yeah, Roger Ailes harassed and assaulted many women, would take out his penis and run around the room chasing after women, according to the stories. And that's why he was sued, he settled cases, they made payments, he was fired. It's proven over and over again, but I don't care. He's my flasher, he's my guy. And
he's
he gave
on my
me,
team.
Yeah, he's on my team. And so I love Roger Ailes, right? So he assumes we will do likewise. But the reality is we don't care. We condemn that kind of behavior no matter where they are on the political spectrum. In fact, Harvey Weinstein's excuse the day after was even more gross.
Yeah.
So he did this apology, and I hadn't read the New York Times story yet. I'm like, oh, the first half of that apology sounds fine. The second half is really weird. Then I went back and read the story, and I'm like, oh. So the second half of the apology was like, I will be fighting against the NRA even
deflecting,
more. I was like, wait, what does the NRA have anything to do with this?
It has nothing to do with it. It was him trying to pander to,
liberals, because he thought, oh, well, remember, guys, I'm on your side. No, you're not.
Don't care at all.
And he's like, and I will be naming, I'll be giving more money in favor of women, and I'll be naming it after my mom, and I don't want to let her down. Dude, you should have thought about that before the potted plant. Okay, and so it's a little late, and don't hide behind your mom. Don't do that. So we're not like the right wing. We're not going to defend you because you think you're on our team. So if the guys that did know him want to take a couple of days and figure out did he actually do it, and then once they're sure condemn him, that's perfectly fine. For all those Republicans still defending Bill O'Reilly, and yes, Donald Trump, who bragged about, just like Weinstein, I'm famous, so I can grab and grope them all they like, and all I like, and there's nothing they could do about it. He's the guy you voted for, and all those conservatives on air still defend to this day. So please spare us your crocodile tears about Weinstein. You guys are the ones who don't care at all.
We got to take a break. Let's do that, and when we come back, more news. You don't want to miss it.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Snacks?
We're good.
Iguana?
Sir, we are go for landing.
Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir, I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the bandit firing now weeks old and waning in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
The hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
All right, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
The Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
sir. I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations.
Led by Germany, Italy, and some of the creditor nations like Netherlands and Finland.
Cameras, position, social media team.
Race run follows. 10 seconds. As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is gonna be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be the finest hour 2 yet.
Giving mood. Angela Merkel's government seems to have signaled pronounced.
Come on, Jink.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Ray for Madness writes, and the American culture of white supremacy coolly rolls on. It's not white supremacists that should scare you, it's the system. Daniel Pareja writes in, remember that according to right-wingers, stand your ground is only for white people. And Matt Odom says, it's about power. Weinstein was power. He held a checkbook for people like Lohan. They don't bite the hand that feeds.
Right.
Yep, all right, what's next, Anna?
All right. A high school student who was suspended for refusing to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance is now suing the school district and the principal who decided to suspend her. Her name is India Landry, and she is a student at Winfern High School. And apparently she was sent to the principal's office after she was caught texting in class. And then while she was at the principal's office, the Pledge of Allegiance was done through the intercom, and she remained seated. At that point, the principal apparently saw her and wasn't too pleased with it. Let me tell you what the exchange allegedly was. When the principal, Martha Strother, asked Landry to stand, the 17-year-old declined. According to the complaint, Strother told Landry, well, you're kicked out of here. And then her secretary allegedly told the student, this is not the NFL. Now, this is a public school that receives taxpayer funding, which means that administrators or educators who violate free speech are basically violating the Constitution. Now, in some cases on a school campus, there are more limitations to speech, especially when it comes to something that could be distracting to an educational environment, or if it's speech that could potentially harm anyone on campus. But in this case, it was protected speech. She is not to be forced to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem or anything like that. She was suspended for several days, and now she is filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the school district, and I think she has a pretty good case there.
So I want you to understand that the texting had nothing to do with this story. This only reason it's brought up is because that's what got her sent to the principal's office, and that's fine. You're not allowed to text in class. So but that's not the issue. That's not why she was kicked out. She was kicked out because she wouldn't stand for the pledge, and that has been her consistent principle, as they pointed out, over 200 times. And that's what's great about this country is two things. One is you have the freedom of speech and can express your political opinions in any way you like within these confines, and she's perfectly within her rights to do that. And so that's what the Pledge of Allegiance is about. That's what the country is about, is celebrating that idea. So the people who are doing this, they're so wrong-headed, and they're actually insulting the idea of America way more than the people who are practicing the freedom of speech and protesting their government and their government's actions. Protesting your government's actions is the most American thing you could do. And then the second part of it is, think about, like, she's saying, hey, I want to, in essence, fix the system, fix the injustice, and create a more perfect union, which is exactly what the Constitution wants you to do. The Constitution doesn't say sit on your ass and don't do anything, don't ask for redress of grievances, don't protest, don't be the press, don't try to fix the government. It says fix this government. In the Constitution, it gives you two different ways to do amendments and to protest the government that the Constitution has formed. It is a document built by rebels. They literally rebelled against the king, they did a revolution, they won their freedom, and it's built on freedom. So the people who are saying, no, you should not exercise that freedom, misunderstood the whole point of the country. They're the ones who have no respect for that flag and what it stands for.
So the type of mentality that the principal had in this story is not, it's not unique to conservatives. I want to be clear about something. This type of weird jingoistic bias runs deep in the country, and I didn't really realize how deep it runs until fairly recently, to be honest with you, when an audience member was pretty upset during a recent show when I made the argument that the United States is not the best country. Now, I don't say that because I have disdain for the US. I love this country. I have extremely high standards for this country. And I think that it is incredibly wrong-headed to pretend as though everything is perfect and that we should be complacent and that we shouldn't expect better from our country, right? So for instance, obviously we have a long way to go when it comes to our healthcare system. We have a long way to go when it comes to a number of things. There have been a number of international studies that rank countries based on quality of life, the economic situation, healthcare, education. You think we're number one on those lists? We're not number one on those lists. Okay, and so yeah, we need to improve. And if you want to think about it on a micro scale, think about an employee that you work with, a colleague that you work with, someone who might get constructive criticism from management. I mean, if that person said, no, I'm perfect, I'm not going to take any criticism, I'm not going to consider any of these improvements. I mean, well, how would you think of that person? They're not going to improve because they are completely oblivious or they refuse to accept the fact that there are improvements that need to be made, and that's not cool.
Think about your husband.
Right.
What kind of a person doesn't ever change? A person that can't adjust or adapt, etc. Look, one last thing about this. I remember, and you got to remember, I was a knucklehead. I used to be conservative, and it drove me crazy when people wouldn't stand for the pledge, and I thought it was wrong, and they should have been kicked out. So I was wrong, and I was willing to change. And I used to be upset at Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, who used to be Chris Jackson, and he wouldn't stand for the pledge because he was Muslim and he cared about his religion. Okay, now of course in America we say we care a lot about religion unless you're Muslim, and they're like, your religion, no, stand for the pledge. Now the reason I tell you that whole long story is because it's not just Americans. So he had issues with the NBA. He went to go play in Turkey, and then he didn't stand for the Turkish national anthem either because he felt it was against his religion. And Turkey's 99% Muslim. They're like, what is with this guy who won't stand for the national anthem? And they were even more pissed at him than the Americans were. So he thought he was gonna get a better reception because the country is Muslim, and he did not. So I tell you that because I get it, man. It's in our bones. Like, we wanna stand up for our flag, we wanna stand up for our country, and that's something, because we're standing up for our tribe. What I'm asking you to do, what America is asking you to do, what the Constitution is asking you to do, is to get beyond that and realize that standing up for your country is to help it get better.
Yes.
Okay, not to just stay stagnant if it's doing something wrong.
I mean, think about how simplistic this argument is, right? In the eyes of some people in the US, patriotism is, honoring a symbol. But in my eyes, patriotism is looking out for your fellow Americans, fighting to make sure that we don't send our soldiers abroad and engage in these wars that risk their lives just so corporations can make money. To me, that's patriotism. Patriotism is creating opportunities, or in the very least, maintaining the opportunities that we've taken advantage of so younger generations can also take advantage of those opportunities. That's patriotism to me. Those are the things that I get fired up about, and I think most Americans would get fired up about if we actually had a genuine, sincere conversation about this. But instead, people are sitting around having conversations about the flag or a song or an anthem. Those are not the issues here, okay? The real issues are how average Americans get screwed time and time again by a broken, corrupt political system.
No, and real patriotism is making sure that FedEx and UPS get tax cuts so that they can automate your job away. Anyway, go to tytnetwork.com/investigates to see the latest in the investigative stories about the tax cuts and the job losses that they will create. Go to tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. Hear the post game we're about to do, and you get the whole show, 2 hours commercial free anytime you want. You can download it, you can stream it, and get all the network shows. Get all the interviews live, like I did with Naomi Klein the other day, and old school and aggressive progressive. All of that is coming up later in the week for members. All right, guys, much love. We'll see you in the post game if you're a member.
Bye bye.